Hi everybody, Jason here with Murideo, and today I have a special guest from MSolutions, Ariel Marcus. Ariel, how are you?
I'm great. How are you, Jason?
I'm good. Thank you so much for asking. I wanted to meet with you today because we have some existing modules for the MSTest Pro, but new features that were added to that. And on this particular video, we want to take a look at the DC resistance module specifically and talk about that, talk about some of the new tests. And once we run the test with your live demo, we'll sort of show the folks the different reports and what to look for. And basically, other than testing the integrity of the cable and the video signal, this is an additional test that will test the health of the power running through the cable. So it's very important when I show people these tools. If I'm testing a category cable for HDBaseT, I really want to run both tests. I want to use the transmitter or the receiver to test the signal integrity, and then I also want to run the DC resistance test. If I do both of those tests, I'm very, very confident in that cable. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, definitely. People today thinks that we're using an infrastructure which is already on the market for many years, but they are forgetting that the technology that we are transmitting over those category cables is actually improving all the time. And
Yeah.
improving means that we are transmitting more data. More
Right.
data is more frequencies, more bandwidth, and so on. So the
Yeah.
infrastructure needs to improve at the same time. So
Um,
definitely you are correct on it.
and also, by the way, guys, if you do want to see some of the other tests that we're speaking of besides the DC resistance test, just check the YouTube channel, the Murideo YouTube channel, and we'll have these videos kind of sprinkled throughout. So if you do want to go back and maybe learn the tool from scratch, you can maybe watch one of our older YouTube videos, or we even have a training video on murideo.com that walks through the unit, shows you all the different menus and screens and whatnot. But today specifically, we wanted to concentrate on the DC resistance module. So Ariel, before we get started, let's talk about the physical configuration you have right now with the module and the cable. What I normally do for this is I have the DC resistance module in the MSTest Pro, the category cable's plugged in. On the other end of the category cable, we have the looper module. So it's a very simple setup on running this test. It's just a reminder.
Exactly. So once again, my name is Ariel Marcus. I'm the CTO of MSolutions. And today, as Jason mentioned, we will talk about the DC resistance, the DCR module, which is plugged into the MSTest Pro. The MSTest Pro is an HDBaseT tester, a modular one provided by MSolution and by Murideo. This tester is modular so that you can do different type of tests that are covering your installation. So you can test the HDMI, you can test the HDBaseT, you can test also the category cables, and this is exactly what we would like to discuss today.
Yeah.
So in all, yeah, Jason.
I was just going to say, for the installers out there, at the end of the day, this is really to help you guys save time. I've done installations for many years, and we certainly understand how much it costs for an installer to go to a troubleshooting job and to do a truck roll. So at the end of the day, these modules that Ariel's speaking about and these tests that we're going to look at today, this is really to save you guys time and give you the confidence that when you leave that system, that you're not going to have any of these weird issues that you may not have had if you had not tested the cables. So we'll see here when we run the DC resistance tests, these take seconds. Sometimes it'll take longer to plug the cables into the unit and get it configured physically than sometimes that will take longer than it does to actually run the test. So when I show up on site to help a dealer with these troubleshooting calls, we'll usually know within minutes if the cable has a problem, or if the cable's okay, or maybe it's another cable, or maybe it's a transmitter or receiver. Whatever the case is, we know very quickly, and we don't have to just randomly start swapping, hardware to hopefully fix the picture. This is a very simple test, doesn't take much time, very helpful for the guys out there in the field.
Exactly. So as I mentioned, in order to plug into the tester, you have two different modules. One is plugged into the tester with this 20 pin, and you have the RJ45 to connect the cable. The other one is a looper, a remote unit that has HDMI and category RJ45 interface. The target is to test HDMI or category cables. It is a passive module. You don't need power for it. You can test using it the complete infrastructure end to end, means from transmitter to receiver, including the patches and so on. The
Right.
example that I will show you is based on the cable that I have in the left side of me. It's a 90-meter infrastructure, including two patches of 5 meters from each side. And we will see the numbers and we will see exactly what we're saying about those cables when we are talking about LAN, HDBaseT, and specifically HDBaseT 3.0, which is the latest HDBaseT standard, covering 18 gig of video transmission, the 4K 444 HDR resolution. So what you're seeing now on the screen is the web interface for the MSTest Pro, the MSolutions tester for HDBaseT and DC resistance. You don't need to configure the tester the moment that you plug in a module. The moment that you plugged in the MSolutions DC resistance module, you will see the DC resistance UI coming on the screen. You have two types of screen. One is the touch screen, which is on the unit itself. And this is what you will see. You have setting on the right top corner. You have menu on the top left corner for power, for files, and all the things that you need. And you have the DC resistance tab in order to activate it.
And Ariel,
yeah.
How are we seeing this right now? And let's just talk to people really quickly about how you're able to access the web GUI and the web interface.
I'm connected at the moment. The tester is connected through a LAN cable to the same network that my laptop is connected. So typing the IP and we can find it very easily. The moment that you plug in the tester to the network from the RJ45 connector next to the 4 USB inputs of the main unit of the tester, you will get the local IP information, how to log into the tester. Now, if you will connect, by the way, the tester to the Wi-Fi environment, you will get it also here. It will be written with a small w at the beginning. It means Wi-Fi and the IP. You can access it directly from your system, from your laptop, PC, or everywhere on your network, on your local network that you are connected to.
Personally, I like. Oh, sorry,
yeah.
Ariel. You cut out for just a second. I didn't mean to interrupt you. I like to use my smartphone because, you know, holding my phone in my hand, the menu and everything is identical to as if you were looking at the main unit itself. And I think that's very helpful because you might have a situation where you have to leave the unit on one end, you know, and then walk, you know, several rooms over perhaps to the other end. So obviously, if I'm in the other room, I'm not going to be able to push buttons on the unit. But if I open up my browser on my smartphone and type in the IP address, it's as if I had the unit right there in my hand, although it is another physical location. I find this super helpful. So as Ariel said, you could do this from any web browser. It could be a laptop, tablet, you know, in my case, like a smartphone, like I mentioned. But as long as you have a browser, you can get to the interface. Very cool.
Exactly, and this is a responsive UI, so that the moment that the resolution is going down, you will see it. It will adopt the resolution of your screen so that you will be able to see the information in the best way. This is an example. Now, when we're going to the DC resistance menu, for example, we're seeing this is the first landing page. Now, if I'll compare it to the web UI, you will see totally different. If I reduce the size of the screen, you will be able to see that I will drop down to this resolution. This is only in a way that will help you to see in the easiest way how to get all the information. So with your permission, I will continue with the web UI because it's
Yeah,
the one that
no,
provide
totally
all the
fine.
information immediately.
Yeah, no,
So,
no problem.
so we landed on the DC resistance page. What we are seeing here is the complete analysis based on the IEEE 802.3 BT standard. It provides you the information on the pair-to-pair resistance, unbalanced in between the pairs. What you are seeing here is a good cable that the difference between pair A and pair B are actually zero. So you're seeing here a very good value. This is why it is passing. But once again, this is related to IEEE 802.3 BT. This is related to LAN ability of carrying power over the cable. Now, what we have done with, in MSolutions, we provided an advanced setting. First of all, the target is that you will be able to understand the different implementation and the different ways that you are using the category cable in the different implementation. Not all of them are LAN implementation. You have HDBaseT implementation, and the cable characteristic need to fit the HDBaseT. If we're talking about LAN, we have a symmetric transmission, 110 or 1 gig or 10 gig, but it's always a symmetric transmission. When you're talking about HDBaseT, you have an asymmetric. When we're talking about HDBaseT spec 1 and 2, we're talking about 10.2 gig going through the category cable. When we're going to spec 3, we increase it to 18 gig. So things are changing. Quality of the cable is changing. Power goes on top of the cable is changing also. Let's look first of all at the different parameters that we are presenting according to the IEEE requirement. The IEEE is telling you loop resistance is not that important, but this is actually going from one side and returning on the single twisted pair inside the RJ45. In our case, you can see a cable which is very, very balanced. And remember, we're checking it with a very high resolution of measuring the ohm resistance throughout the cable. This represents the infrastructure cable and including the patches, the two patches on both sides, on both ends. And it also includes the connector of the RJ45, the female and male connectors and how they are tied to the twisted pairs of the category cable. So this reflects all in all, from one side to the other, the resistance of the cable. Parallel DC resistance is actually how we see the cable when we are transmitting the power. The power is being transmitted on two pairs as the positive side and two pairs for the negative side. Still, those wires are actually connected in parallel between them. So the resistance is dropping down in order to provide higher current and lower loss on the cable itself. So this is the difference between 13.5.05 that runs from one side and going back and seeing the parallel resistance of the same wires. The most important thing is the pair-to-pair. This is actually showing us the differentiation between pair A, for example, and pair B. It shows us, and this will also affect these numbers. If the cable is unbalanced, it will be reflected on voltage drop, but it also will be reflected in propagation of the signal through the category cable. On LAN, if we have a bad type of cable, means there is differentiation, it will be failing here in some points or another. This will affect in LAN the bandwidth that you are achieving. Most of the time, for example, if you are connected to a provider that gives you 100 meg or 200 meg connectivity, it doesn't mean that you are actually achieving 200 or 100 meg,
Right.
because you're, in most of the times, you will achieve between 60, 70, 80 megs on the line. The problem is, in most of the time, the connectivity and the resistance and the ability to propagate the signal in the best way so that it will achieve. Having unbalanced cable means that you will have a lot of retransmission of packets from one side to the other. This means that you're sending data, the remote side is either not getting it or getting it with a lot of errors, and he will ask you, send it again. Think about it. You're going one time from one side to the other, and then being requested to go once again and again. And this happened in many of the packets that are being transmitted. This is actually how you are losing time. You're losing bandwidth. And this explains exactly what goes on the cable and why the quality of the cable is important. What we did at MSolutions, we actually improved the way that we are looking at the cable. Because HDBaseT, for example, is an asymmetric link, means the bandwidth from one side, from transmitter to receiver, is very high, but the opposite direction is a very low one. Especially on spec 1, it is about 12 meg, and on spec 2, it was increased. On spec 3, it's even increased more. So it's still an asymmetric link, and we cannot treat it the same way that we are treating LAN. Additional very important comment is that HDBaseT doesn't have retransmission. So how it will overcome the differentiation on the cable itself? If the cable is not good and we are unable to retransmit data, we're unable to receive the picture. So we get video drop or we get link disconnection, depend on the amount of error and the amount of loss on the cable itself. So what we did, after a lot of investigation of different type of cables, we came to the conclusion that most of the cable will require different limitations on how we pass them. For example, loop resistance. There is a limitation, a very visible one, measured one, that will tell you, okay, if you are talking about a PoE implementation, which is 15.4 watt on the cable, and you want to transmit a LAN and you have a 24 gauge cable, which is a Cat5e, this is the limit on loop resistance that you are allowed to have as the maximum. It will be a 21 ohm and it will be for 100 meters. All the measurements on DC resistance, according to the standardization of IEEE, is referred to 100 meter or 333 feet. Okay? So this is the reference that we have. Now you need to understand, in my case now, in the cable that I connected over here, we're talking about 100 meters. So we're seeing that the measurement here is for 100 meters. If we will take a shorter cable, 50 meters, half of the size that the standard is saying, and we will see a high resistance, it means that this cable might fail. You need to understand, when you route the infrastructure, you're bending the cable from time to time. Those bends are increasing the resistance. So we provided a limit for the resistance. If I'll go with the same cable and change it to HDBaseT, you will see that this limit immediately drops. It drops immediately because we have an asymmetric link, we don't have retransmission, we did a lot of calculation and measurements to see that it will fit. So this particular cable on a Cat5e will pass. If we will take it for a Cat6, for example, you see that it's already starting to fail. This cable will not fit in a Cat6 with the resistance that it has. It will not work properly on an HDBaseT. So it is okay that you are improving the cables, but you need to understand with different type of cable, different category cables, even though it's a Cat6, you can have different gauge implementation, and all of this will affect the different limits that you have. So on the limit for loop resistance, you are failing, but on the limit for unbalance between pair to pair, it will work. What will be the results for this? If you have a problem with the, I would expect that you will see video dropouts. You will see blue screen from time to time and an unstable picture. Again, very simple to test it, very simple to see what is passing and what is not. If I go, for example, for the touch screen on the UI of the tester, on the tester itself, you're seeing the small dot here, the small red dot. Let me try even to increase the size of the screen so that you will see it even better. You have a small red dot on the touch screen, it's very visible. It means that loop resistance is failing. If I go to the pair-to-pair, no problem with it. If I go to the parallel DC resistance, and all of it based on the advanced mode. On the advanced mode, we're seeing the limits that we provided. We're seeing the limits for the loop resistance. All of it can be with changing from this UI in order to configure for the specific cable that you have, Cat6A or Cat5E or Cat7 or even Cat8 that we are adding now. So all of these are very important. All of these are very important to measure it and to understand. I've seen a lot of cable which are actually copper coated aluminum and copper coated steel, and I'm saying that a lot of times. It means that the core of the wire is either aluminum or steel, and it is covered with copper. Those cables are coming with very high resistance. High resistance. They will be balanced on the testing for the IEEE. They will be balanced, but it will fail because of the resistance, because of the high resistance. So this is the information for LAN and HDBaseT. In addition to that, now we just finished and launched the HDBaseT Spec 3 implementation. Since we increased the bandwidth, we have now different limitations for HDBaseT Spec 3 and how we are measuring it. Some of them are in parallel and the same values as we have for the HDBaseT, but Spec 3 is much more sensitive from Spec 1 and Spec 2 of the HDBaseT. So the high bandwidth is creating a lot of problem here, and it's very necessary to check the quality of the cable. Again, physical layer. It affects, as I said, the propagation of the signal through the line, and it affects also the power delivery from one side to the other. It is important, by the way, for PoE and POC. POC is not out of the loop with those numbers, and I'll tell you why. If you have a high current, or you have a high, let's say that you have a low current and it is the same all the time. It's a fixed current going through the line. Think about it. You need to drive 21 volts or 12 volt or 5 volt from one side to the other. If the resistance is high, the drop on the category cable for long distances will be high. Means that the remote side will get from you a very low power. It will get a low voltage on the remote side. This low voltage will actually fail the remote unit from working properly. So it is important. Same thing goes for the propagation. When you try to drive the signal through the cable, you will get fails. Now, after we set all the information, very important, we can create a PDF report directly from the category cable. You can name it whatever you want. MSolutions, for example. you can generate the file. It will be saved directly as a PDF in your tester, inside the memory cache of your tester, and you will be able to submit it. You can see here the download report. If I press it here, I will be directed directly to the folder where the file is stored, and I can select the file, either to download it, email it, or synchronize it to the cloud. And this is something that we will come with a separate session about the ability to control, measure, and work with the tester from the cloud in remote. Very important for different companies. When you have somebody in the field seeing problem, you can log into his system from remote, and you can support him with the knowledge and how to analyze information that he's seeing by capturing log, by seeing the performance, and so on. Now, if I'll press the email directly from your system, you can submit an email with the report attached to it to whoever you would like to send it, whoever you need to send it. This report also provide you as a warranty. For example, we can download the report, and if I'll open it now, you will see how the report is actually structured. You have the first page, which is the front page, which provide information about the test, about the location, about the date, the operator name, serial, whatever you need on the cable, and you can see the quality of the cable. The quality of the cable and what tester and how it fails, you can see here 13.5 when it is targeted to 8.75 and so on. So you're getting all the information. You can see that the power drop, for example, on this cable will be around 1.6 watt when it is totally allowed to drop on the cable a 1 watt. This means that it will consume power from the remote side. It will prevent the remote side from getting the power. So very important numbers to understand. You can see the setup of the cable. You can see the information about the cable and how it is configured while doing the testing. Serial number. By the way, you can upload your own logo to this report, and it will generate the report all the time with your logo. I can show you here from the setting menu what you can do. You can do upload user logo. This is the size that you are allowed to use, 200 by 200. You can provide different profiles for sending email. If there are several users that are using the same tester, you can create for each one of them a profile, and when you send the email, you will know exactly who was the one that actually created the report. So you're seeing everything here related to the DC resistance and the measurements of the different cable. Very important test if you would like to have your infrastructure ready for the video transmission that you have. Either it's LAN or an HDBaseT, it doesn't matter. Okay, Jason. So I think we covered most of the things here.
Yeah, that looks great, Ariel, and I love some of those new features. I remember before the Spec 3.0 wasn't there. There wasn't as much customization with the cable type and things like that. So I really do like. I love the new upgrades and stuff. Just a question I wanted to touch on. You mentioned before, and I haven't come across this quite yet, but you mentioned. Did you mention Cat 8? Is there a Category 8 cable that I'm not aware of yet?
Yeah, we're starting to see some definitions for Cat 8 cables, which will be the highest quality, but still, it's not that common, let's say this way. It's very difficult to find those. Same as going to 28 gauge on the category cable. This is also something that we have a special demand to add this one to the tester. So we're checking it all. And yes, there is a request for high quality cables, higher than what we have today, in order to pass the bandwidth. Listen, the market on LAN is going to 1 gig.
Oh, sure.
It's going to fiber in between the apartments, in between
Sure.
buildings, but
Yes.
in the office and inside the residential, it will be a 1 gig on a copper wire. So
Right.
you definitely need it. And the bandwidth for video is increasing and increasing and increasing. You know,
Of
it's
course.
something that we're seeing all the time. 18 gig on a category cable, which is actually designed for 1 gig. Maybe the Cat6a for 10 gig was designed, but 18 gig, we are doubling the bandwidth.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Well, that's very good, Ariel, and I love how thorough it is and how easy it is to use. And the reporting is always something I'm a big advocate for, because if you're making one run for one projector in somebody's home theater room, that's obviously very simple. Run some tests and make sure the cable's okay and certify it, and that's nice. But in a lot of cases, especially with HDBaseT, you're in something like a conference room or an auditorium or a classroom or something along those lines, a football stadium. I mean, lots of different scenarios there. But I love the fact that after the installation, you have all this paperwork and all this documentation that says, I've tested every single cable, I've replaced ones that failed these tests, and now they're certified, no problems going forward. So it's very thorough, but also at the same time very simple. Something I've always really liked about this, about the tool, about the MSTest Pro.
yeah, definitely it's important. Today, the ability to make a sign off on a work that
Yes.
you've done,
Yes.
with providing warranty to the customer, and avoiding the let's call it misunderstanding between the installer, the integrator, and the customer. After 3 months that you're seeing a failure here or a video drop over there, it's very difficult, to say who is responsible for what.
Right.
What we are providing with the MSTest Pro, something that to do a sign off, a complete sign off,
Mm-hmm.
HDBaseT performance, category cable quality, HDMI cable quality. We are covering end to end in order to avoid questions that will
Mm-hmm.
come later. You never know, on a boardroom, if there is a failure on air condition or
Yeah.
lightning, how the
Never know.
electrician will put the new wires, or all of those are driving you nuts when you are in the field and you would like to fix it because the customer is blaming you.
Sure.
This is how it is, if we want
Yeah.
it or not. This is the way. This is the way to work with the method of providing report for each part of the things that you are doing, because you are doing a lot. AV installers are becoming, expert in IP
Yeah.
and
You
in
have to.
HDBaseT and in
Yeah.
HDMI, and they need to know it. The information, there is a lot of information to know, but there are less testers that can do in a one shot everything
Right.
and cover you end to end. So
Very good.
this is the main target for us.
Good, good. Well, excellent information, Ariel. Again, I love the new features. This is going to be very helpful for the integrators out there. And even, there are a lot of other folks besides integrators who use these tools. So maybe you're a cable manufacturer or anything on the manufacturing side, you can use these tests. They're very, very super helpful. So Ariel, I don't have any other questions. Thank you so much for your time. Do you have any maybe last words on the DC resistance test?
Yes, it's not on the DC resistance, but if somebody would like to ask question, if he will forward it to you, they can approach me also directly. No problem with that. You will add my email so that
Yeah,
any questions, I'll be happy to answer on it.
they
And as I mentioned, we're going to come. I didn't mention it actually. We're going to come up also with the same method of testing for physical layer for
oh
USB-C.
yeah, of course.
Today we have on the market a lot of different cables, and it's very difficult to say which USB-C cable is supporting PD power and which one is supporting only USB 2 or 3,
Right.
or so we're coming up in the coming ISE with a brand new module that will be able to tell you exactly on the USB-C cable and USB 3 cable the quality, how it is connected, and what it is supporting.
And it sounds like to me, and correct me if I'm wrong, but you're not going to have to buy a brand new, piece of test equipment. This is probably just going to be a module you slide in and out. Yes.
Yes, exactly. The MSTest Pro is a modular tester.
Right.
The main idea behind it is that it will be able to adopt new technologies. For example, if we will test, and we are planning to test HDBaseT Spec 3,
Yes.
we will have a brand new module that will plug into the tester and will provide all the ability to test HDBaseT 3.0, which is totally different from the
Oh
previous
yeah.
one.
Oh yeah.
Yes, it's a
Very
modular
nice.
unit. You don't need to buy a new tester for it. You buy it once and then you upgrade it all the time with different features, with different modules, and with different capabilities.
Ariel, do you know yet at ISE? Are you going to be in the HDBaseT booth doing demos, or where can people find you if they do go to ISE?
We're planning to have our own booth,
Oh,
but
very cool.
again,
Very nice.
things are not closed yet. With the COVID-19 and everything,
Mhm.
it's very fluidic. Even though today and for the last month or two, the situation is improved and improved. Still,
Mhm.
it's there. We need to
Yes.
understand exactly, and we would like to avoid the surprise. Anyway, we
Yes.
will be at the HDBaseT Alliance, and we will be with AV Pro and Murideo. We will be there to show, and we will publish everything later on.
Awesome. Fantastic news. And thank you, Ariel, again for your time and showing us the new features. Again, my name is Jason. Super easy to find me, jason@murideo.com. If you do have any questions for Ariel or just in general about any Murideo topics or products, shoot me an email. And any questions that I might not know the answer to, then we have Ariel here as well. And we'll definitely get those questions answered for you. One thing I do want to mention, just last piece here. One thing that I really admire about you guys, Ariel, is that when a customer does come to you with data and they don't know how to interpret the data to know what they need to do to the system to make it work correctly, you guys are always super helpful when it comes to helping interpret these reports and things like that. So if you guys are running these tests and you have a question about some of the numbers or anything like that, then let us know and we'll get those answers for you right away. So again, thank you so much, Ariel.
Thank you, Jason, for having me.
Good, and we'll see you next time, okay?
Thank you. See you
Bye-bye.
next time. Bye bye.